bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yeah, thanks Ollie there, thank you. It is Thursday, May 9th. How you doing? Did you have a good Thursday? Hope you're well. Thanks for choosing the Richie Allen Show. A lot of tweets about one big story today, in the UK anyway. We'll focus on that story and much more besides on Thursday's Richie Allen Show.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Welcome back. Later on in the programme, Dr. Stuart Waiton PHD will return to the show. The Abertay University lecturer has been on with me a few times talking about issues around gender identity, issues around political correctness, vulnerable groups, minority groups, criticism, and the media. He's a really, really interesting guy. I like him a lot. He's going to stand for the Brexit Party in the forthcoming EU parliamentary elections. So Stuart Waiton joins me later on in the programme. Thursday's show broadcasting live on Fab Radio 2 here in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv and Tune In Radio. Yeah, and richieallen.co.uk. Yes, I've been busy with richieallen.co.uk. When the website went up, it was my intention to put about a half a dozen articles a week on the site. Not just mine, but articles from other people as well. But it's been a mad year. It's a busy enough thing to do to put the radio show together that my plans never came to fruition. But I'm planning on putting more pieces on the website. Thought-provoking stuff that might incite a bit of debate. I don't know. So richieallen.co.uk, where the radio show streams round the clock if you missed it, and I'll have articles going up there more regularly than of late. All right. Welcome to the show, right? Let's jump straight in then. The BBC has sacked Danny Baker, who's a very well-known radio and television presenter. I think if you're not from the UK and you've never been here, you mightn't know who Danny Baker is. Football fans know him very well, and radio listeners know him very well. He's presented radio for a lot of commercial stations, and he's been on and off the BBC for years. Now, in recent years, he's presented a weekend magazine breakfast show for the BBC, which is very, very good. Baker has always been somebody, for me anyway, this is just my opinion for what it's worth, who's understood the medium of radio. He really understands it. And he's one of those rare presenters. There's not many of them. So when you're listening to him, you could be out having a jog, you could be in the car, you could be in the shower with the old soap on a rope, and you feel that Baker is communicating directly with you, because radio is a one-to-one medium. And I've always felt that to succeed at radio, to really succeed in connecting with your one listener, is more difficult even than television. I really do believe that. People say, telly's more difficult, you're more exposed as a presenter. I don't believe that. That's just my opinion. And I've done both. But I like Danny Baker. And he's been sacked. And the BBC has said he's been sacked because he showed a serious error of judgment over a tweet about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's baby. Now, he deleted this tweet, which went out, but it circulated yesterday on Twitter, and the tweet portrayed an image of a couple holding hands with a chimpanzee dressed in clothes, like gentleman's clothes, dressed in a suit. The couple are dressed well too. It's an old picture. So he put out this picture of this couple leaving a hospital with a chimpanzee in the middle, and the caption read, "Royal baby leaves hospital." He was accused of mocking her racial heritage, her being Meghan Markle, who married Harry Hewitt last year. Was it last year or the year before? He said it was a stupid gag. We can hear a bit of what Danny Baker had to say because Sky caught up with him Sky News caught up with him at his house this morning. They got the scoop. They got the doorstep scoop and got a good 5 minutes with him today. So let's have a listen to what Danny Baker said. Now, you might be saying, oh, Richie, that's very mainstream. No, it isn't. This is not a mainstream news story. This is a very serious story. And we'll try, you and I together, we'll try and put a bit of context on it. Rather than me rant away to tell you how you should feel about it, which I never do anyway. Let me know what you feel about it. And if you are a person of colour, if you're black or a person of colour, feel free to drop me a line. And if you want to come on the programme, I'll bring you on. If you disagree with me. No harm in that, eh? So, Sky caught up with him earlier on. And this is Danny Baker. You might first hear the presenter.
Did you think about it, though, when you were doing it? Did you not think about
not necessarily. Otherwise, I'd have to be some kind of slavering secret racist, I promise you. I would... nobody invites this onto themselves. No, I had no idea until somebody... It had been up about 8 minutes. Somebody said, Dan, that's Megan... What's it? Like, down. People say, you must know she was over. I know she is. But the House of Windsor these days, apart from the old firm, I genuinely didn't. And I genuinely, no one in their right mind would have put that juxtaposed that grotesque, diseased mind image. I did. But I did it because I didn't know it was Princess Sajafata having a kid. But once it's explained, of course this all happens. Once that was explained, of course it happens.
Yeah, he said he knew who Markle is, but he didn't know anything about her heritage. And he also said that because he's not interested in the royal family. And I'm inclined to think it's a credible claim by Baker that he takes no interest in it. He knew that one of the kids was having a baby. But that's about as far as it went, he said. So, he's not happy with his former employers because he was next asked about the BBC response.
But I can totally understand them getting us off down the road. I think they're probably overdue in some respects. They've never really we've never had a great relationship, me and the BBC. I think the way they did it was preposterous, ponderous, and a bit showboating. We have seen this quote, we find it to be one of the most abhorrent. I said, yes, I agree with all that. But here's the deal. You've got to have intent. And I didn't. And people say, oh, you're stupid, I buy all of that. People say you're making light of racism. No, I'm making light of my situation. I am that person now who gets this on Twitter. I'm that person. And you've got to make light of that. Say, but the actual thing itself, no, of course it was abhorrent and all. But, I must say, if, God forbid, Jacob Rees-Mogg had a baby. There's my photograph again of a well-dressed little chimp coming out of hospital. One of my kids, God forbid, there's that. I've got a history of doing that, not that. I've got a history of, on the radio for years I did monkeys dressed as famous people plus fairground music.
Yes, which he has done, anybody who's ever followed him, right? So, he's the guy who thinks monkeys dressed up and fairground music is funny. She asked him, he would have done it if it was Jacob Rees-Mogg having a child with his wife. So she asked him, were you a bit naive there, Danny?
Because I'm still one of those people who thinks monkeys are quite funny. Not in that context.
Do you accept that some people will think, though, that it's at very best a bit naive?
Oh, I've told well, it is. It's not at very best. That's what it is. But since when I started, look, being naive and a bit stupid, I'm actually Twitter fueled by that. But being naive and a bit stupid is not going out canvassing for the National Front.
Yeah, I reckon Twitter is fueled by the naive and the stupid. And my gag doesn't signal that, I'm going to be next going out to canvass for the National Front.
So that's it, but nobody wants to buy that. And then, look on people like yourselves' faces this morning. He didn't know Meghan Markle was the mother of... I might have even known she was pregnant, but the idea that... Then I thought, this is my chance now, as I say, to rip off the beard and reveal myself as Himmler. No, I didn't.
Do you feel let down at all by the way the BBC have treated you?
No, I couldn't say what I had to do. I felt the way they did it. As I say, I thought it was a bit. It almost sounded like they had cameras on him, and that is why we will not tolerate the. They seem to tolerate an awful lot sometimes on the BBC, but some of the stuff that gets said on Question Time makes my little chimp in a top hat seem like a chimp in a top hat. So, but in the context of that, of course.
Do you think it's because it's the royals that they?
Oh no! What for you people? This is celebrity. By the skin of his teeth, celebrity, royals, baby, Twitter, race, this is a pretty potent brew. And that's why today you think, oh yeah, that's going to blow up all right. But it came from such a, like say, naive, silly thing. And that's all you can cling to, you know?
Yeah, I don't think he's racist, and I don't think the post was racist. But that's just me. I'm open to be convinced otherwise, right? Now, later on, Sky brought on the black DJ and writer Edward Adu. In conversation with Kay Burley, he acknowledged that he knew Baker and that he'd met him. Okay, so he acknowledged that he knew him and he'd met him along the road. So what did he think of what Baker had to say when he was doorstepped?
Danny is a Londoner. He grew up in a certain part of southeast London. He's in an era where there were lots of racism. He knows the deal. He knows he shouldn't be tweeting stuff like that.
He said he didn't know that it was Meghan's baby, and he wasn't aware that Meghan was mixed race.
It shouldn't, regardless whether it's Meghan's baby. Say if that was one of your relatives who happens to be mixed race or anyone else, no one should tweet that.
But he's saying he didn't know that he was saying that he didn't know that she was mixed race. Do you think he's lying?
Right, so this is the crux of it. This is a laddish, football supporting, down the pub, loves a couple of pints even. What's a pint? A pint. He loves a couple of pints down the pub, loves his football, and says that he has absolutely no interest in the royal family. I'm inclined to believe that. Burley's asking the important question here. He says he didn't know the child has mixed race heritage. Do you believe him, to the black DJ?
He's not here. We've got to give him the benefit of the doubt where he's not here to defend himself. But it's common sense. Everybody knows that Meghan's mixed race.
Really? I wouldn't know. If I didn't do this programme and be subjected to the UK press every day of the week, I wouldn't have a clue. And I mean that. I've been, in my many lives, I've been a teacher, I've been a lecturer, I've been a producer, I've been a barman. Now, if you take out the journalistic stuff, I wouldn't have a Scooby-Doo about any of the royal family, none of the members, or their relationships, or their children. So this, come on, everybody knows Meghan Markle is mixed race. Why? Why does everybody know that?
Yeah, he says he doesn't follow the royal family, so it's completely been taken out of context.
Good, Kay. This is good.
Do you think what he's being economical with the truth at the very least, I'm guessing. Is that what he's...
Don't editorialise there now, girl. You've asked the question, let him answer.
No, listen, the bottom line is, and one thing nobody's asked, where did he get the picture from?
He's explained it. He loves monkeys and fairground music. He's got albums full of these pictures. And when he's done his Radio 5 live shows on Saturday mornings, he's often put stuff on Instagram and on Twitter like that very picture. He has explained that. Now, Burley fails miserably here because she should remind him of what Danny Baker said to their doorstepping reporter earlier on, but she doesn't.
Where did he get the picture from? It's not something that you can do a quick search on social media to find out. I'm not saying he researched or whatever, but I mean, you literally have to go sort of out of bounds to find a picture like that to play.
Unless you're into that sort of quirky, silly stuff of yesteryear, which Baker is. Listen to the podcast of his Saturday morning programmes. It is the most weird and wonderful radio breakfast show you've ever heard in your life. It segues off into a million different directions. And he loves all this stuff. This old music hall stuff. This old, I don't want to say, Blackpool Pier type stuff. All this mad stuff is what he loves. It's an eccentricity and he's into it.
To place it on Twitter.
He says that he uses images of monkeys as part of his radio show. He's done it for years, and it was just an extension of that. No one was critical of him when he did it then.
And for this moment to tweet it about the royal baby, come on, Kate. I mean, is that a logical answer for Danny to make?
Yeah, why not? Why not? Right. Any forgiveness then? Let's just pretend it was a joke with racist undertones. Let's just pretend it was. Any forgiveness? What about the sacking? Kay asks next.
Do you think he's right to have lost his job?
As a broadcaster, if you listen, we're all set by boundaries. if I did that, if you did that, I'm sure we'd be out of a job as well. So we've got to be careful. It's not just about tweeting. It's as a speech and music broadcaster, I have to be careful about certain things that I say, and also about music that I play. I think we owe so much to our audience, and we're responsible for what we do. So I think even with social media, Danny, he should have known what he was about to tweet.
Okay, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks very much indeed. That was very important what he said there. As broadcasters, we have to be very careful. And he said, as a DJ, I've got to be very, very careful about the music that I play. And this is self-censorship. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute, in a little bit more detail than I went into in my article today. This is this creeping self-censorship. It's wonderful. It is us as sentient beings doing the system's job for it. Right? I've got to be very careful. Every time I take a step forward, got to be very careful. Is that accepted? Is that okay? Has that passed muster? Is it? Well, I better check and I better think about not doing it or not saying it, lest it be something that has been outlawed or banned or criticised or whatever. I'm going to read a couple of comments that are important. Jean-Anne Crowley, oft mentioned, very good friend of mine, and Jean-Anne is very well connected as a brilliant journalist and writer herself, and as a very successful actress. And she tweeted she didn't tweet it, she put it on Facebook, my article earlier on, and she put it on there. And one of Jean-Anne's friends is a guy called Philip Nolan, and Philip writes for the Irish Daily Mail. He's one of their chief writers, and he commented on my piece, which is nice. He's a writer, he's a good writer. He wrote, he wasn't aware of Meghan Markle's heritage, really? Come off it. This is Philip Nolan. And Jean-Anne Crowley replied to him, and I think in the reply she used a quote from Christopher Hitchens, which is, if someone tells me that I've hurt their feelings, I say, I'm still waiting to hear what your point is. I've been told that's offensive, as if those two words constitute an argument or a comment. Not to me, they don't. Christopher Hitchens, I believe. All right. Self-censorship. We'll come to that now in a second. Lots of your tweets coming in as well. I will get to some of them. Right. Let's pretend that I don't like Danny Baker as a presenter. Now, I've never met Danny Baker, so I don't owe him anything, or anybody else for that matter at the BBC. So let's try and be a bit forensic about it. Let's try and be a bit Miss Marple about it, a bit Jessica Fletcher about it. I'm trying to curry favour now with the feminist vote there. Right. Miss Marple, Jessica Fletcher, Nancy Drew. Danny Baker, if he'd known that Meghan Markle's child had mixed heritage because the child's grandmother is black, if he'd known that, he'd never have put that picture on Twitter because he's not thick. Very smart guy, Danny Baker. If he'd known the child was of mixed race heritage, he would have known that by putting it on Twitter, he was in serious trouble. So he didn't know. That's what I believe. He didn't know. He just didn't know, right? Is what I believe. Now, when he was informed that it could be perceived that he was actually comparing a child to a chimp, a child from a mixed race background, he said, sorry, my gag pic of the little fella in the posh outfit has whipped some up. Never occurred to me because, well, mind not diseased. Soon as those good enough to point out its possible connotations got in touch, down it came. And that's it. Now stand by for sweary football tweets. He's a prolific user of Twitter. He understands the social norms when using Twitter. He understands Twitter storms. He understands how Twitter works. So he didn't understand the mixed race or the mixed heritage angle. He didn't. Otherwise he wouldn't have put it up. Right? Even if he was racist, he's not stupid, right? Right. So the BBC summarily dismissed him without suspending him or asking him to come in and discuss it. Now keep that in mind. This is really important as well. I used to be a member of the NUJ back home in Ireland. They just got rid of him. No suspension. Somebody spoke to him on the telephone for a couple of minutes, but they didn't bring him in. Said, Danny, what's going on? So that has enabled the social media platforms and, more importantly, those who use social media platforms to now act as judge, jury and executioner over anybody. No chance to explain. No room for a chat. Gone. No such thing as has, what's the word I'm looking at? What's the word I'm looking here for now? No such thing as currency built up over the years. Oh, this is a good guy, this guy. He's funny. He's quirky, bit of a man of the people, bit of a Jack the Lad, bit of a working class hero made good on the radio. He's always been good. None of that. None of that. Just gone. He's gone. He's gone. And I said this today on my website. Outrage is all the rage and all the fashion on social media. And I didn't coin the term the professionally outraged, but they're out there and they are constantly looking through tweets of people in the public eye, predominantly, not you or me, but people really in the public eye, looking for any opportunity to take offence at something that was said. And it's always, of course, taking offence on behalf of somebody they've never met. And more often than not, again, it's taking offence on behalf of somebody whom they don't share a gender with or they don't share an ethnic background with. And the really spooky part about all of this is something that I discovered last year, because I really am naive when it comes to the internet. Doxing, which I had to ask Hayden Hewitt what it meant. What's doxing, Hayden? And he said, Richie, this is where people seek to publish private information about you online, including even your address, to get you fired from your job because you might have said something deemed to be unsayable or deemed to be taboo. So doxing is, these people, not only do they demand that you're, banned from Twitter and that you're never seen again on social media, they also seek to destroy you personally, your private life. This is what happens. And it's going on. And I made the point today, if Baker 10 years ago put that picture on a notice board at work, or if he was, I don't know, if he was a teenager who did it, and he did it at school, people would have laughed at it because it's a funny picture. And yeah, of course, somebody might have said, hey, Danny, I don't know if you know this, but that child is a mixed race heritage. He probably would have taken it down, and that would have been the end of the story. So I want to talk about self-censorship and where it's coming from and how it's come out of all this. It's coming from something called global groupthink. Well, groupthink is something that we've heard about before. I see it now as global groupthink. We, you, me, and everybody else are being conditioned. Some of us are aware of it, some of us are not. We are being conditioned to fear, and I really do mean fear. This isn't an exaggeration. We are being conditioned to fear saying anything that the group deems to be controversial or taboo or even a little different. We're being conditioned. How? You got to back it up, Richie. Well, we've just seen the methodology. When people talk about issues around gender identity, when people talk about issues around race, when people talk about Gaza, Palestine, Israel, any of that, they are often swamped by the Twitter storm brigade, the progressives, as you might call them progressives. I don't see them as being progressives. This is something much darker. Swarm all over them and hammer them. Attacks coming in from all over the place, calling them hateful and racist, talking about hate speech, while at the same time others are working to unmask them. Because a lot of people, some people use anonymous names on Twitter because they just want to call people names. And they're morons. I don't care about those people. If they want to do that, fair enough. There are other people who use anonymity on Twitter and Facebook because they want to have a debate about these things. They want to express their opinion, but they don't want to be then unmasked, and they don't want their companies to be contacted. You really can't have this person working for you. We know that an accountant was recently fired from her job. I sent her a message on Twitter. She got back to me, said her lawyers have said, Richie, don't do any radio yet. She was fired because she said that a man who identifies as a woman couldn't be a lesbian. She was fired for that because people demanded that she was fired for it. And that's what's going on. So where does that lead? That leads to self-censorship. And self-censorship is the death of individuality and independent thinking. Self-censorship is where you create your own eggshells to walk around. You do it. they started off in your mind with this programming, and then they laugh and they walk away, and you're stood there tiptoeing around a bed of eggshells that you have created, terrified, without being consciously aware that you're terrified, of saying what it is that you really feel from the heart about anything. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. You won't do it. I made a joke once about conversations that will take forever. Do you remember I joked about this? It got quite a bit of mirth. People laughed at it. I said, can you imagine conversations are going to take 20 minutes now? 25 minutes. Because somebody will say something to you and you will pause for fucking 5 minutes thinking, what can I say? Not what do I want to say, but what can I say? That's okay, that's allowed. And in the end, nobody has any right to be wrong about anything. You've got no right to be wrong. What's right and wrong anyway? It's a subjective concept, isn't it? What is right and what is wrong? Who knows? I don't know. I talk a lot of bullshit on this programme sometimes. I say sublime things sometimes, and by the way, that's once in a blue moon. Most of the time, what I say is ridiculous. It's just my emotive, heartfelt opinion on stuff. Doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. No. It's up to you to decide whether it's right or wrong. But you put it out there. But that's got to be dealt with. We can't have that. People speaking from the heart. Groupthink. Leading to self-censorship, which is insidious. It's the worst of the personality changes in human beings under this oppressive Orwellian agenda. Self-censorship is the worst of all of these traits, of all of these characteristics, of all of these symptoms. And I wrote today, and I mean this, we've suspected that social media is a very inverted thing. It isn't social, and it certainly isn't the media. It's an inverted thing, and it was engineered, I believe now, I've come to believe this over the years, to destroy reasonable, rational, free, open, honest debate. They perversely use terms like safe spaces. That is fucking ironic. What an inversion that is. Everybody should feel safe to say whatever it is they truly believe, even if you think they're a moron. Even if you think it's racist, even if you think it's hateful, they should be allowed say it without career-ending consequences. That story of that economist, the blogger, being fired for saying that a man who identifies as a woman can't be a lesbian. How utterly terrifying is that? And what does it say to young... I said this today as well. What does it say to youngsters? You're 44, you're not that old. No, I'm not. But what does it say to teenagers and university students and young men and women entering the workforce? What does it say to them? It says, look at how independent thinkers are treated when they stray from the group think. When they move away from what has been designated as the righteous position on any issue you can think of. Because that's what's happening here. Every issue, gender, family, religion, race, politics, is now being allocated an accepted fucking position that you must hold. And if you don't hold that position, don't speak out about it, because you can be destroyed. You can be destroyed. That's the message. And it's coming through to young people loud and clear. And as I said today, even worse than that is the kids are now being engineered and programmed into looking for opportunities to alert to the group, I'm with you. I agree. Danny Baker's a racist fucking pig. I agree. That's what virtue signalling really is. It's become a cliche. It's become a buzzword. That's what it really is. Christ, I better let them know that I'm okay. And they leave me alone then. That's what's happening. Perfect example of this madness, this landscape, was There's a black actress who calls herself an actor. She's an actress called Kelechi Okafor. Now, not only is she an actress, but she writes the occasional opinion piece. And she put a piece in the Metro newspaper today. Listen to this. This is true. It's on my Twitter page. People can see it. She put a piece in the Metro today condemning Danny Baker as a racist. Fair enough. It's her opinion. No problems. So I sent a very polite tweet to her. Hi Kelechi, I respectfully disagree with your article. If you'd like to debate it on my radio show, please PM me. PM means drop me a personal message. She blocked me. She fucking blocked me. Honest to God. If she tweeted back, fuck off you gammon, it would have been better than blocking me. Fuck off you Irish gammon. No problems. Fair enough. Right. I'd have said something back naturally. You know, no shy retiring lad am I. But journalist. What journalist blocks the producer of a radio show for respectfully inviting her on? How does that happen? And if you are the commissioning editor at the Metro, wouldn't you phone her up and say, what in the name of Christ are you doing? Guy asked you to go on a radio show. Are you not able for it? Is he racist because he thinks that Danny Baker wasn't a hateful bigot when he put that tweet on yesterday? Why don't you just go on the programme? She blocked me. Unbelievable. You think you're naive. You're naive, Richie. Somebody said to me on Twitter, you're naive. That's incredible. And that's the sanitisation of discourse. That's what it is. Can't have it. He's persona non grata. Can't talk to him. He sides with Danny Baker. There was a time when black journalists or black activists or any other activists from any other ethnic group would have broken their arms and legs running to Skype to get on the programme to say to me, how dare you support Danny Baker? And we would have had a bit of a chat about it. Now, no, block him. This is what it's doing. And I'm going to tell you something now you don't know, but I know, because I've got friends in tech, in very high places, at least in this country anyway. Google is rolling out new artificial intelligence software. Wait for it. Wait for it. It is self-learning artificial intelligence software. It's sentient. It thinks for itself. And do you know what they're going to do with it? They're going to unleash it on YouTube. Because on YouTube, there are hundreds of millions of channels, right? You know that, right? Hundreds of millions of people. Some good, some very good, some utterly awful, some very funny, some not funny at all. Millions and millions of channels where people put up their content and they put up their videos telling you the way it is. Brilliant. It's the way it should be, right? Right. So what's the artificial intelligence software going to do? Well, it is going to work on the comment section of all of those channels to root out and delete comments that have been deemed to be inflammatory, to clean up the debate. So when somebody quite rightly goes onto my YouTube channel and underneath my video says, Richie Allen is a big fucking wanker, he's totally wrong, what a dickhead, excuse my language, right, whatever, that's going to be deleted and that person is going to be banned. Right? It's all going to happen through an artificial intelligence program that is constantly learning how to do it better. Somebody who listens to my program has every right to go on YouTube afterwards to say, what an arsehole, what an idiot, what an effing this, what an effing that. If you're going to put something in the public domain, don't get upset if somebody says, what an arsehole, tough shit, Paddy. But they're going to do that to protect people from seeing abusive comments. Can you believe it? And that's where we are. This Danny Baker thing is a perfect microcosm of the macrocosm. The social media platform and its users, its virtue signalling users, acting as judge, jury and executioner over a man that was given no time to say, listen, this is what happened. This is how I see it. Sky got him on for a couple of minutes and Burley said, well, he says he didn't know she was mixed race. He says this, he says that. It doesn't matter. It's too late. He was gone then. How long before Twitter decides to suspend his account and ban him because he's racist and he compared a mixed heritage baby to a monkey? He didn't. If you believe him, and you might say, I don't believe him, Richie, and you're entitled to that opinion as well. It's 22 minutes to the top of the hour. There's been hundreds of tweets on it, literally hundreds of tweets. Let me get to them. In the meantime, I'm going to take a tune. I'm going to come back. We're going to go in a different direction. We're going to talk about Prince Charles and paedophiles and his relationship with notorious paedophiles over the years. Yes, that's what we're going to do. Back after this from Morrissey, Lord Moz of Manchester. It's a song called Hold On To Your Friends on the Richie Allen Show for Thursday, May 9th, 2019. Music from Morrissey from the album Vauxhall and I on your Richie Allen Show. It's fast approaching 16:17. It's 17 minutes to the top of the hour. It's late on a Thursday, is what it is. I'm looking at the clock. I've got a digital clock, so I've got to do the addition and the subtraction. I've done it a million times in a million radio studios. Sometimes I struggle with it. Welcome back to the show. Lots of tweets. Shall I read some? Let's read some tweets. Let me scroll down. There's so many of them. I've just lost the page now. Patricia tweets, the sad truth is the majority of people have lost the ability to discuss opposing views. The prevailing sentiment seems to be either you're with me or you're against me. They don't understand that discussion could potentially find a middle ground. This is sad, says Patricia. Excellent. David tweets, we knew this day was coming. Tighten your helmet straps. Indeed. And the artificial intelligence programs to be rolled out across Google's YouTube is a direct result of politicians around the world claiming that the discourse or the debate has become hateful. So we've got to eliminate hate speech. And hate speech is not now going to be defined solely as hate against people or ethnicities. Is not going to be solely defined as hatred against minorities. The new hate speech definition is going to be anything that is deemed to be hateful against anybody. So when you go on to somebody's YouTube channel and they've said something that you find to be absolutely ridiculous and without any merit, you can go on there and go, oh, you effing Egypt, you effing that, you complete moron, you Zionist shill, or whatever. But not anymore. In the future, that'll all be deleted and you'll be banned. Within milliseconds of you hitting enter to send it to the channel. That's a fact. Go on to my YouTube channel or any other content creators. Scroll down. The contents are hilarious. How could you be offended by them? How could they be hurtful? You know, name calling and stuff. It's just funny stuff. And they're going to basically remove that. Wonderful, eh? Somebody mentioned Skynet. Richard was. Yes. Yes. That's exactly it. Some guy called Tom Burgess is saying this is not about humour. This is a racist joke by Danny Baker. The committee it has to be approved by is called the law. Baker said he didn't have any idea about the background of the child. Why don't we take him at his word? There's been no history of the man ever doing anything like this previously. So why don't we take him at his word and say, okay then, be a bit more careful maybe, Danny, in the future? No, he's got to be sacked. He's got to be destroyed, he's got to be banned. He's got to be labelled as a racist. Like it or not, because we've said so. Fuck him and fuck everybody associated with him. Matthew tweets, Matthew Phillips, how you doing, Matthew? These people who look for outrage and getting people sucked into jobs, excuse me, that's your fault, Matthew. It's your typo. I should have read it first. These people who look for outrage and getting people sacked from their jobs with their flaming torches are so ignorant of the fact each time they do that, they put a nail in the coffin of their own free speech. That's excellent, Matthew. It's very well put, my friend. That's right. Ultimately, when everybody else is banned, they're just you. Dean Smith tweets, thanks, Dean. Thanks for supporting the programme, by the way, my friend. No trial, no opportunity to speak your side of the story, no chance to stand in front of a judge and jury. There's a bell, I know, that might be linked to slavery. It may be part of the LGBT community. It could be black or white, but it will not be heard, he says. There you are. Charlotte Binns. How you doing, Charlotte? Can you start the programme again? No. That's why we have podcast. Yeah. That's why we have podcast. Right, I'm going to move on because it's 14 minutes to the top of the hour and there's so much to talk about. And there's Dr. Stuart Waiton. Listen to this. This is very serious. The Church of England's response to child sex abuse allegations was marked by secrecy, according to the independent inquiry into child sex abuse. Yeah. The former Archbishop of Canterbury, George Carey, has been criticised for supporting the horrific paedophile Bishop Peter Ball. The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, the IICSA, said Ball was able to sexually abuse vulnerable teenagers and young men for decades. The report also said that the support given to Ball by the Prince of Wales was misguided. Yeah, you see, Charlie Boy was very supportive of this horrific paedophile after he found out that, well, he was a horrific paedophile. We'll come back to that. The report, the IICSA said, Prince Charles's actions could have been interpreted as expressions of support for Ball and had the potential to influence the actions of the church. Yeah. The IICSA described the appalling sexual abuse against children in the Diocese of Chichester, with 18 members of the clergy convicted of offences during a 50-year period. In this diocese, 18 members of the clergy and this filthy paedophile Ball raped many children over 50 years. Now, we know we reported on this when it blew up a couple of years ago. Here's Sky News reporter Jason Farrell with more on this.
This is a guy who was a prolific paedophile, he was a prolific sex abuser, but he was also the Bishop of Lewis and Bishop of Gloucester, and there were allegations against him going back decades that the church didn't act upon, and that is what this report is saying. It is actually particularly damning of the Archbishop of Canterbury, former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, describing him as weak, saying that he often made the wrong decisions. It says even when Peter Ball resigned, they actually released a press release that they say was inappropriately biased, praising Peter Ball, presenting his resignation as an act of self-sacrifice. They say the church's response to child sexual abuse claims were marked by secrecy, prevarication, and avoidance. They say the church put its own reputation above the needs of victims and survivors and demonstrated a permissive attitude towards some perpetrators, even when they had been convicted. And it goes on to say that it concludes that the apology given by the church remains unconvincing. This is all from the independent inquiry that's being led by Alexis Jay. And she has released a statement saying that for years, the Diocese of Chichester failed the victims and survivors of child sexual abuse by prioritising its own reputation above their welfare. Not only were disclosures of abuse handled inadequately by the church, but when they came to light, the response was marked with secrecy and disregard for the seriousness of the allegations. She says Peter Ball was one example of how a senior member of the clergy was able to sexually abuse vulnerable teenagers and young men for decades.
For decades. Yeah. And Prince Charles, he protected the church, didn't he? And his pal, his friend Peter Ball, whom he knew to be a monster.
Prince Charles had known, then there's photographs of Prince Charles with Ball, and he had known him. He had actually tried to get a flat to rent to him and his brother, and he had spoken to the Archbishop of Canterbury on his behalf, making representations about Mr. Ball. The report says Prince Charles's action in speaking about Ball to the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Duchy of Cornwall buying a property to rent to Ball and his brother were misguided. It says his actions could have been interpreted as an expression of support for Ball and had the potential to influence the actions of the church. And as you say, the lawyers acting for some of the victims say we may never know the true harm caused by Charles's intervention in his support for Ball. There has been as you said in the introduction, a statement from Clarence House saying that it remains a matter of deep regret that the Prince, along with many others, he says, were deceived by Peter Ball over many years. And he says, at no time did he bring any influence to bear on the actions of the church or any other relevant authority. So Prince Charles feels that his actions didn't have any influence, but the lawyers representing the victims here saying, well, we may never know exactly what influence Prince Charles had in this case.
My goodness.
My goodness, says Kay, eh? My goodness. My goodness. Old Charlie boy, jug ears. He knew some pedos in his time, didn't he? He knew some pedos in his time.
All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
Please disperse. Jimmy Savile, Prince Charles's best friend, for years and years and years and years. How could Jimmy Savile get access to the inner sanctum of the royal family when the intelligence community in this country knew he was a notorious paedophile? Did Charles know? What did Charles know before Peter Ball was outed? We know that he supported Ball after he was outed as a disgusting defiler of young children. What did he know? Said before, it's gutter journalism to accuse any man or any woman of anything without any proof. And I never have, and I never will accuse any man or woman, whether they be a member of the royal family or whether they be a man in the street, of anything. What I would say, though, and I've said it 1,000 times, why hasn't the Metropolitan Police popped around to whichever of the massive houses Prince Charles lives in to say, do us a favour, Charlie boy, will you? Come and have a conversation with us. Because maybe you might be able to help us unravel this elite paedophile ring just by some of the things you might have observed over the years. I mean, you did pal around with Jimmy Savile, didn't you? You did try to secure property for Peter Ball after you knew that he was a notorious raper of children. We'd just like to know a little bit about your movements with these guys, anything that you could tell us that might be of any use in future investigations. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Please disperse. Staying on this subject, Pope Francis, the head of the Catholic Church, has made it mandatory for Roman Catholic clergy to report cases of clerical sexual abuse and for cover-ups to be stopped effectively. This is unbelievable. This is mad shit. Now, I know all about this because I've been following this for years. But this should be an outrage to anybody who hears this story today. It has been made mandatory this week and only this week for Roman Catholic clergy to report cases where priests and Christian brothers and nuns are abusing children. Only now is it mandatory. Now, this comes from what's called an apostolic letter. An apostolic letter, yeah. And that means it'll become church law. And Francis has said he wants to make it clear that any sexual advance involving the use of power will be considered abusive, must be reported. Mad times, eh? The Pope promised back in February to take concrete action to tackle sexual abuse. His predecessor, wait till I give you a laugh, his predecessor, Pope Benedict, used to be a cardinal before he was Pope Benedict, and his name was Cardinal Ratzinger. Wait till I give you a laugh. Ratzinger knew in the 1980s that children were being raped by priests in Ireland. What did he do? Well, he informed the various bishops around the country that when they knew that priests were raping little boys or little girls, that they should move those priests to another parish. I think it was called the Fresh Start Programme. It wasn't, I just made that up. That's what he would say. Not get a baseball bat and bash his fucking brains in, defrock him and throw him into a ditch. No, he said bury it, hide it, cover it up, move them to another unsuspecting community where they can start raping again. And they made him Pope. Yeah. Wow. Listen to this from James Reynolds. He's the BBC correspondent in Rome. He says the Pope's decree is meant to change the way the church investigates cases of abuse. You know, it should be fairly straightforward, right? You get some information as a good priest that Father Malloy is molesting children. You go straight to the police, is what you do. Don't you? No, we had to have an official decree from the Pope this week, and it's just crazy stuff. President Donald Trump has called for more sanctions on Iran. You know this today, the mad president, the mad king in the White House, Bibi's boy. He's raised the pressure on Iran, according to the BBC, on the same day that Tehran said it was suspending some of its own commitments to the nuclear agreement. Trump signed an executive order imposing sanctions on Iran's metals industry, which is the country's second biggest export after oil. Trump did say, though, that he hoped to meet Iran's leaders to work out a deal. Yeah. So they've all been coming out of the woodwork today, the UK, France, Germany, the European Union, warning Iran not to abandon the deal. But Iran isn't abandoning the deal. The US pulled out of the deal at the behest of the other mad king in Tel Aviv. So Trump said today's action targets Iran's revenue from industrial metals, blah, blah, blah. Tehran can expect further sanctions, blah, blah, blah. You know as well that the US sent an aircraft carrier to the region. You know this as well. Dan Kovalik is a professor of international affairs at the University of Pittsburgh, and he was on RT. He says Iran does not want nuclear weapons. It's provable.
I think we have to keep in mind the fact that, first of all, our own intelligence services have said that Iran, if they had any intention ever to develop nuclear weapons, that they gave it up by 2003. The current Ayatollah of Iran issued a fatwa against the creation, development, and maintenance of nuclear weapons as against Islamic law. So the point is, Iran has no intention to develop nuclear weapons. It wants nuclear development strictly for energy purposes. And so I don't think anyone should feel threatened by this. By the way, we have to also keep in mind the fact that Israel has probably 200 nuclear warheads. The U.S. has thousands, and right now Iran has none. So this should not concern any of us.
Shouldn't concern anybody. Dan Kovalik there. But Israel says that Iran wants the bomb, and Israel can prove it.
Bibi Netanyahu says he has proof that when the Iranians say they just want to enrich uranium, what they really mean is they're going to make a bomb. That's what he said. This is Bibi Netanyahu.
I think Netanyahu can't be trusted on this or any other issue.
You think?
He's a right-wing zealot who's lied before over such issues. And let's keep in mind, Israel has attacked Iranian targets in Syria, and Iran has not retaliated in kind. Iran does not want a war, much less a nuclear war. They are not a threat to Israel. They are not a threat to the United States.
Yeah, they're not a threat to anybody, Iran. You know, and don't give me whataboutery. There are things that go on in Iran that I don't like and I wouldn't support. And I've talked about before. I've argued with Kevin Barrett, who's Kevin works with Press TV. I love Kevin. He's magnificent. He's a great guy, great journalist. And I've had great discussions, fair discussions with Kevin about justice in Iran. But the country is no threat to anybody. There's no doubt about it. Shall we very quickly move on to a little bit of Brexit, just for a minute, just for the crack? By the way, if Graham Booth is listening, let us know about Trigger Warning tonight on triggerwarning.tv and on YouTube. I think it starts at 10 p.m. tonight. Let me know if it does. I think it does. I know because I always catch some of it every week. It's a terrific programme. It's gas, so it is. Great gas, great crack. Hayden Hewitt and Graham Booth. Triggerwarning.tv. Vince Cable is the leader of the Liberal Democrats, not for much longer because he's going to resign. But he has been defending today his party's decision to adopt bollocks to Brexit as its slogan. Well, it's part of its election campaign, its European election campaign. They've got a couple of manifesto leaflets Each leaflet says the same thing, but they've got different covers. On one cover, it says Stop Brexit, and on the other cover, it says Bollocks to Brexit. That might become a collector's item. Bollocks to Brexit, right. Vince Cable said he hoped that the British people would have a sense of humour and see the funny side of the manifesto's front cover. He spoke to Good Morning Britain today.
You've issued this, or printed a new, is it a manifesto? Is it a vision for stopping Brexit?
It is a positive vision for Brexit, what we think we can do in Europe.
So you've got the one here, but there's also another one, which Susanna talks about the toxic nature of politics at the moment. And there's one that's much more direct. I'm going to cover this up slightly, but you can see that there. You can imagine what the rest of that word says. You don't need me to say it. But that's quite a dramatic, toxic word to be using in this sort of environment, escalating the feeling as well.
Well, there's also something called humour, OK? Maybe as a country we've lost our sense of humour, but it is an attempt to put in a more pungent way what an awful lot of people think, actually. That we're just going to get past this episode.
It's a real poke in the eye, isn't it, to the people who voted?
Well,
to use that kind of language.
It's clear, it's honest.
It's an offensive word. Isn't it?
Well, some people...
I don't want to have a sense of humour, but it is.
I mean, there are, wallflowers who get offended by this thing,
but I'd imagine this was discussed at length. Can we do it? Can we be brave enough to do it? Should we be brazen enough to do it? And if you're sitting down and considering it for that long, I assume that was... This didn't land on your desk and go, hold on a sec, what are you thinking here? You would have had an opinion on this. Do you think this is OK? Do you think putting a swear word on the front of this, as Susanna said, that is so pungent and punchy towards those people that voted against it?
Well, some people will be offended. Some people are easily offended. Other people will think, well, actually, these guys are absolutely straightforward about what they believe. And I think, on balance, the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's dreadful to find yourself on the same side as Vince Cable. If they want to put bollocks to Brexit on their leaflets, they should be allowed to do so. Free speech means free speech. There's a word that doesn't belong in this sentence. I believe in free speech. Should never be followed by but. There is no but. Okay? I believe in free speech. I know you might argue incitement to violence. I know that. We've done that before as well. It's 3 minutes past the hour. It's Thursday's programme, May 9th, 2019. My name is Richie Allen, and I'm going to be speaking live in a couple of minutes with Dr. Stuart Waiton PHD, who has decided to stand in the European parliamentary elections. This is really interesting stuff. He's been writing about this in the Herald in Scotland. And we know Stuart, of course, has been a brilliant social commentator and author, and he's been on this programme talking about many issues around identity, politics, of course. So while I dial him up, let's have some Bob Seger. Yeah. It's a week for air guitar. This is Europe's most listened to independent radio show. I'm your host, Richie Allen. Great to be with you. Thanks for choosing the programme. Thanks for tweeting it. Looking forward to this chat. We will, of course, have to talk about Danny Baker with Stuart as well. This is Hollywood Nights on the Richie Allen Show. Bob Seger on the Richie Allen Show. Hollywood Nights, 6 minutes past the hour. Thursday's programme, last live show of the week. I will, of course, be with you on Sunday morning with Sunday View, our weekly review, our Sunday review of the newspapers, the Sunday papers here in the UK. Now, let me read you something. Let me read you this. Very good, this. It's from the Herald, the Scottish Herald. Have a listen to this. Have a listen to this. This is good stuff. The key political question of our time is not whether or not you voted Brexit or Remain, but whether or not you are a Democrat. For this reason, and this reason alone, I am standing in the forthcoming European parliamentary election for the Brexit Party. If democratic decisions can be ignored or overturned, British democracy will have become little more than a rhetorical device used by our politicians, a hat tipped to the masses while the real business of government is carried on behind our backs. That was written by Dr. Stuart Waiton. Stuart's been a regular guest on this programme. He's a lecturer at Abertay University. I think he's a brilliant social commentator. He's written several books, and our discussions on identity politics have been really valuable. Let's welcome back to the show Dr. Stuart Waiton. Stuart, welcome back.
Hi, how you doing?
Really good. Has your Wikipedia page been taken down because of your decision to stand for the Brexit Party, or are you even aware of that?
No, I'm not. I didn't know I had a Wikipedia page.
You had one, yeah. I used to use it sometimes. When I first spoke with you, I just got a couple of snippets from it. Now, it could be that I can't find it, and it's still there, but it also could be a benign thing. Maybe the Wikipedia pages of candidates are taken down to stop any messing around or any false claims or whatever. I don't know. This is incredible, really. Did you ever imagine in your wildest dreams you'd be throwing your hat into this particular mad circus ring? What do you think?
Not really, I must admit. I suppose, well, as soon as the whole Brexit thing kicked off, I was pretty anxious about whether it was going to actually happen. So that's a reality, I suppose. And I wanted to try and do something because all my instincts told me that the political elite, for want of a better term, would not want to do it. So, but on the other hand, I thought, well, but they'll have to do it because it's democratic. They've just voted. How can they not do it? So I was kind of like, I was in two minds, but I wanted to try and the more the process kind of like dragged and was twisted and turned, I kind of was desperate to do something and I didn't know what to do. I wrote some rubbish article somewhere where I kind of set up a imaginary Brexit Party of my own where I'm saying, is there anyone out there wants to do something? So, I'm not a big fan of Nigel Farage particularly. I don't probably agree with him on loads of things, certainly not on immigration, I imagine. I've got, there's nothing particularly that I see myself in common, except I think democracy is being completely undermined, and it seems to me the most important thing that we need to defend at the minute. So I threw my hat in the ring. Brilliant. I was obviously very much in favour of the UK leaving. When I lived in Ireland, I was very much in favour of the Irish rejecting the Lisbon and Nice treaties, which we did, and we were told to go back and vote again once we got it right. So, but you're hitting on a very important point here, Stuart. It shouldn't matter whether you voted Remain or whether you voted Leave. The fundamental issue here is far more important. Yeah. What happens when the public, the people, are asked to make a decision, and they do make one, and then the political class says, well, sorry, we don't like that, we're going to do something about it. It's very, very dangerous. Now, what's fascinating is, since you've thrown your hat into the ring, and because you speak about topics that are controversial, and they're only controversial because some other group has decided they're controversial. I think the subjects you write about are very academic and they're very important for our times. Anthropological and all that stuff. They are. Identity politics, hugely important. The Herald has been bombarded by letters from people saying things about you that they're more than unkind. They're a bit worrying. People saying you're unscrupulous, comparing you with people like Steve Bannon and otherwise. Is this just dirty politics, or is there something else going on there? Well, it's a funny one. I think it's particular in Scotland as well. That I think because of the whole Scottish independence thing, it allows people to be anti-democratic while appearing to be democratic, right? Because you can say, we're standing up for Scottish people. Scottish people didn't vote for to leave the EU, therefore I'm standing up for the Scottish people. So I think it allows them a bit more of an out in terms of a sense of shame that they should feel while challenging democracy. And I think there's also, because they have their own sense of, we are a separate nation in their own heads. Some people do. It touches a nerve, So I mean, I got an email from a kind of an old friend that was kind of lambasting. It was there's swear words and never has been so outraged by anything you've ever written before and all the rest of it. No substantiation. But yeah, I find it fascinating because I'm doing hustings, right? So where you stand as a candidate. I'm doing one in Edinburgh and one in Livingston next week, and I'm just really interested to see what arguments people use, because the arguments that have been presented to me so far, I just think are really shallow, overtly anti-democratic, clutching at straws, very, very empty. And perhaps perhaps I'm kidding myself. Perhaps there are very strong arguments against the argument I'm putting. But if there are, I'm struggling to see them at the minute.
I want to come back to that, about how people are making their arguments in 2019 as opposed to how we used to, because that's very important. And again, I know you've done a lot of work on this. Tommy Sheridan wrote a piece for Sputnik.com, really interesting, about Scottish independence and about how Scotland, to be really independent, would have to be independent of the European Union. And I think Sheridan rightly says any, genuine socialist, as opposed to a social democrat, but a socialist would always have been against the principles of the European Union. And that's fascinating. Now, on that
is interesting. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, because I asked Tommy, I said, is there a divide on the left? And he said, there definitely is, Richie. There is a divide on the left. As we all want independence, but then that's when there's a division. That's where the left splinters into, well, we want to stay in the European Union or we don't. Now, on that, William Henderson is listening to this. William is a proud Scot, and he says, Richie, surely if Stuart is for independence, now William is jumping the gun here because we didn't get to that yet, but surely if Stuart is for independence, he is also for Scotland's independence from both corrupt unions. So that's a good question, because we came in on this. You are a Democrat and you believe that the result should have been honoured, full stop, regardless of whether you like to remain or you like to leave or whatever. So William is putting it up to you. Would you be for Scotland leaving the United Kingdom as well as leaving the European Union? Should it be completely independent?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I didn't vote for Scottish independence. I voted against it. And the difference is that Britain is a democratic country. Now, some people in Scotland want to be separate. That's their prerogative. I just see that as creating a division in what is a democratic country. Now, if you see yourself as absolutely and only Scottish and not British, then you can have a different opinion on that. And they had a vote on it. And the majority, 56%, I think it was, of the Scottish people said they want to remain part of the United Kingdom. So the Scottish people, or the majority of them, voted against Scottish independence, which means we remain in the UK, which is a democracy. And, the frustration in Scotland, as far as I can tell, in terms of how the SNP have managed to capture so many votes, well, it's partly to do with the decline of the old parties, the decline of the Conservative Party and the Labour Party to a certain extent. It's because the SNP appear to have something, a sort of a big idea, which is independence, and the other parties have very few ideas. So there's that. But what's really happened is that people on the left, who in the past wouldn't have touched Scottish nationalism with a barge pole, have given up on the idea that they can build a socialist Britain and think in their imagination they can somehow, Scotland's very different. We don't vote Tory. Therefore, if we have independence, I don't know what, so what, do they vote Labour? Because Labour don't look very socialist to me, certainly not in Scotland. So that's basically what's happened, that the collapse of the left has meant a lot of left-wing people have now thrown in with the SNP, but they've also thrown in with Europe as well. That's, again, classically left-wing people saw the EU as anti-democratic. Tony Benn, one of the most classic socialists of the Labour Party, was completely and absolutely against the EU, saw it as an anti-democratic bureaucracy, which it is. But, again, the left, rather than thinking they can convince people and trade unionists to stand up for certain things, they've turned to the EU and think, oh, well, that's a kind of a roundabout way we can protect workers' rights or whatever. So they've essentially thrown their lot in with a bureaucracy, if you like, rather than thinking they can actually challenge people and win arguments and so on. They've given up on the democratic process in many respects.
Definitely. Dr. Stuart Waiton PHD is our guest. Stuart has done stellar work on, I would say, really important social issues like identity politics, political debate, discourse, gender identity. I could be here all day long. He's decided to, because he's disgusted at what has happened since the June 2016 referendum and how it's shown the country to be fundamentally anti or undemocratic because the result hasn't been implemented. He's going to stand for the Brexit Party. It's really fascinating stuff, this. I would argue with you that this country isn't and never has been democratic. I would point to a couple of things. The obvious one being what's happened with the Brexit referendum. But even going back before that, we've seen anomalies like, going back to 2015 or before that, a party in this country achieving nearly 3.5-4 million votes and yet not ending up with a single seat in Parliament. That couldn't be democracy. And I'm going to throw this curveball at you, Stuart, my friend. I've made a lot of mileage over the years on my programme talking about some of the revelations in The Guardian about the relationship between government ministers and Prince Charles. But not only that, the very fact that a sitting MP is not only not allowed to enter Parliament without swearing an oath of allegiance to the monarch, but is not allowed to take part in debates or even give speeches either, which to me, belies this notion that the monarchy is just some sort of benign, friendly cash cow for tourism. It isn't. There's something else going on there. So I would say we're not democratic. It's an illusion democracy. Go ahead.
Well, I would agree with the points you've raised. I'm a Republican. I think the royal family is problematic, to say the least, in terms of their position within the democratic framework. So I think you have a point. I agree with you. I don't think you should have to swear allegiance to the Queen at all, personally. So yes, I think
swear an oath to your constituents. I've put this question to members of Parliament back in my mainstream days, and they run away from it. At the speed of light, they don't want to touch it. It's extraordinary. The Privy Council, again, I could be here all day. These people are still in charge. That's my conspiracy theory. Anyway, Stuart Waiton is our guest now. It's going to be fun. I want to talk a little bit about Danny Baker. Now you, of course, are a footy fan like me, and we know Danny Baker of old. I like Danny. I regard him as a very good broadcaster. Radio is a very intimate medium. You know this, Stuart, but I often lecture my listeners on radio. It's wonderful, and the presenters who do it well. It's like when you're travelling, you're taking them with you. It's really, really brilliant, and he's very good, Danny. Quirky and weird and wonderful and all of that. You've written books on this stuff. The guy swears that he couldn't give an arse about the royal family, and therefore one of the kids was having a baby, and he didn't know that the child, and good luck to all involved, but the child didn't know it had a mixed race or a mixed heritage background. And judge, jury and executioner, Stuart, no chance to explain himself. He's gone. He's gone. The consensus, the Twitter judge, jury, executioner have decided that he's horrible, he's racist, he's untenable, and he has to go. Is this a fascinating example of some of the work that you've been doing in recent years? Yeah, it is. I agree with you. I take Danny Baker as at his word. The problem is, it's like, how do you know that he wasn't being racist, right? Because, if he'd thought about it, and if he'd sat down and someone had said, oh, by the way, you realise this is a mixed race child, and if you're using a monkey in a picture, it's going to be seen as racist. Yeah. I think if someone had just said that to him, he would have said, oh, that's a fair point, I'll not put it up, right? But I think he genuinely just thought he was being anti-royal. He was, he can't be bothered with royal babies, blah, blah, etc., etc. The Daily Mail today, it's got about 63 pages of pictures of the royal baby and so on. Yeah. And, it's like, I read a lot of various newspapers, and I just like flick, 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 flick. All right, okay, so there's now a news story. So I understand where he's coming from. And I think it's a problem. See, the fascinating and depressing thing about anti-racism is, that was the first campaign I got involved with ever.
was an anti-racist campaign against deportation of a black guy who's going to get deported in London. And I joined that campaign. And I've always been anti-racist, actively anti-racist. And at the time, this is, sort of late 80s, anti-racism was about freedom and liberation and equality, whereas today, increasingly, anti-racism is a kind of tool that's used by institutions and the elite as an authoritarian mechanism to punish people almost unthinkingly. And absolutely, it's almost like a new religion that you must bow down to and accept all of the framework of, you mustn't say that, you mustn't say that, you mustn't say this, you mustn't say all sorts of things. And I think it's one of the things that people find incredibly frustrating. I think people who aren't racist find it incredibly frustrating that they find this kind of this cage being built around them, around terms and thoughts and all the rest of it, when rather than allowing people to be able to discuss things and to argue things or to just use terms and all the rest of it, and you can say, I don't like that, whatever. It's got a really, really quite scary authoritarian dynamic to it. And I think this is an excellent example of where, as you say, judge, jury, executioner, bang, it's like, regardless of what you thought, Danny, regardless of what you mean, we know, all his bosses will know he meant nothing racist by this. They'll know it.
Yeah.
They will. I am sure they know that he didn't mean anything racist by it, but it doesn't even matter that he didn't mean anything racist by it, because it could be interpreted as it might be seen as potentially, possibly a bit racist or racist, and therefore that's it. We must cleanse the BBC of anything even touching something that might possibly be construed as being racist, and that's him. Out you go.
They might find themselves in some pretty hot legal water. I hope they do. Here's a tweet that you'll be fascinated by. Jennifer is listening to the programme. Jennifer's a black lady. She says, Richie, honestly, I've lost all hope that young black people can move beyond playing into the bigotry of low expectation and finally own whatever opinion they have and provide damn good reasons for holding them. The left has so deceitfully focused every intellectual argument on race. That's pretty powerful, that. The left, and we're talking about left social democrats as opposed to socialists, have deceitfully focused every intellectual argument on race. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's true, and I think it's one of the things that's worth bearing in mind and pointing out to people, that this is not black people en masse who are pushing this agenda. This is usually a very small group of black activists who represent nobody other than themselves, and a new elite, which across all the political parties, or all the major political parties, who use anti-racism as a stick to beat people with, and regulate thought and even education. And I agree. I think it's a demoralizing, degrading process that has got there are no benefits to it as far as I can see, especially perhaps and even for challenging racist ideas. To me, it doesn't help anybody.
Before we get a final word on Brexit and the election, and we'll obviously watch it very closely, I've had Dr. David Bull on the programme a couple of weeks back. He's running for the Brexit Party as well. I made a joke about this because obviously I'm independent and I do what I do, so I'm not bound by any Ofcom regulations about giving equal time to other candidates. Now, I'm not triumphantly stating that. The irony is, if I go and ask some of the other candidates to come on, they will say no, because you've interviewed all sorts of weird and wonderful people in the past, Richie. This is just outrageous. And it's, I'd love them all to come on. And we do have a sizable audience. It's big enough that they should care about it. But David Bull said, "Oh, absolutely, come on, Richie." And I don't care what you, and he's a TV doctor, as you know. I don't care what you've said in the past. I said, well, it's not me. I've not said anything. Some of my guests have said some, crazy stuff. But I've challenged them, and we've had a good old, robust back and forth the way we used to have many, many moons ago. So on that, my friend, I couldn't believe Vince Cable was on Good Morning Britain this morning, and they made a massive big deal. And again, it speaks to where we're going, where the debate is going. They've got a leaflet out that says bollocks to Brexit. Right, they're a bunch of muppets, right? But they're entitled to do that, and I've no problem with it. And they went on and on about how toxic that word is, and did you really think about it, and did you sit down, did you have a committee meeting, did you get the final say, Vince? Is that really the appropriate language? What are we doing to ourselves, Stuart, with this self-censorship madness? I mean, where's this all going to end before we get a final word on the election? This is not good, is it?
No, it's not. It's not good. I mean, I suppose you could say, is it classy for a political
it's obviously not,
right? To use certain language, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, who cares? I mean, I like the I like the overt, in-your-face, absolutist use of the term bollocks to Brexit, because it expresses perfectly what I think the modern political class think about Brexit and also think about democracy. So for me, when I hear them say bollocks to Brexit, I also hear bollocks to democracy.
Yeah.
And good, I'd like that. Plain speaking, speak your mind. You say bollocks to Brexit, fine. I'll use that, and I can say, do you know what this guy says? He says bollocks to you. Right, you who voted, you who made a decision, or you who didn't vote, but who recognise that you should actually respect a democratic vote. It's not brain science, this stuff. And yeah, I think a lot of these politicians, it's going to come back, and it is coming back to bite them. And they'll see that when the Brexit Party gets so many votes, which I suspect they will.
Yeah, I've no doubt. And on that, you must be optimistic that you'll get a good vote. Now, look, I know where you are. I know that you're really up against it. But I want to say that, look, I'm with Stuart and David Bull and their colleagues, not because I support the party or any party. I never have, I never will. I don't believe that democracy exists. I don't vote as a rule. I'm tempted sorely in a couple of Thursdays. Or is it Friday we have this? It's Thursday the 23rd, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's the one. I'm tempted to go and put an X alongside David Bull's name. But I'll be called a hypocrite for that, because I don't vote in parliamentary elections for the reasons I outlined earlier on. You will be up against, but I would say to people, look, and I know a lot of people who voted Remain have spoken to me and said that they're disgusted. A neighbour of mine, Dave, lives around the corner, has got a lovely garden. Dave, lovely fella, very centrist in his approach, and he voted Remain. He said to me at the service station the other morning, I'm going to vote for a Brexit Party candidate, he said, because it's outrageous. It's an affront to democracy. So you're hoping that enough people who think this really is dangerous, that so many 17.4 million people's votes are being ignored, will come out and vote not only for you in Scotland, Stuart, but for the other candidates who are standing on your platform in Scotland. How ambitious are you? What do you think you might achieve?
It's a good question, because I put a big bet on. I mean, I voted for Brexit myself, but I put a big bet on that Brexit would lose, because I just thought it's impossible. The whole world, all the major institutions, all the world leaders, the political parties, the most Tories, most Labour, it's like the weight of opposition to Brexit was so massive. I just thought it'll never happen, and I was wrong. And it happened. So, to be honest with you, I'm open for all possibilities at the minute. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, the thing I would say about Brexit, that for any of your listeners out there who are going for it, well, I'm not sure. The thing that is so frustrating for me is that over the last however many years it is since we actually had the vote, they've managed to turn something that is so simple. Right, the idea, do you want to be in or out of the EU, right, into something that they say is so complex. Yeah, what does it mean? Yeah, what were people actually voting for? Yeah, what did people understand? Isn't it? It's so difficult, and there's so many ins and outs. It's like it's like you need to be a sort of like a brain surgeon to understand what this vote was about. To me, it is so incredibly simple. People were saying we want to be democratically run to the extent that we are, not by the EU, but by people that we vote for. So in terms of economics, and politics. We want to know who's doing what, and we want to be able to say, we're getting you out of there. That's it. Right? We cannot get rid of Barnier. We cannot get rid of the people who run the commission. We can't influence the parliament, even to the extent that you can, a real, genuine parliament that a nation has. It's really simple. Either you want to live in a country that is democratic and can make the fundamental democratic decisions about how you want to live your life, and then you can vote against those people and get somebody else in, or you accept that key aspects of your society are going to be dictated to you by people who you can never vote for or against. Very, very simple. And that's it for me. I'm not, that's why I'm standing. I think it's incredibly important. I think it's a fundamental, profound aspect of what a modern society should be, which is that it should be democratic. That was what the vote was for, and that's essentially why I think the Brexit Party has been set up and why I'm standing.
Good stuff. Will Nigel come up and do a little bit of canvassing with you? I suppose he'll be spreading himself pretty thin over the next couple of weeks, but I hope he comes up and attends a hustings with you. Any chance of that?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm just going to do whatever I can and see how that pans out.
Stuart, the best of luck with it, sincerely. And is there any place online that you want our listeners to go, or do you just want them to go to the Brexit Party website? Well,
they can check out my article in the Herald, so just type in Herald, Stuart Waiton, and they can see my article. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's very easy. Just type in my name and you'll find, you'll be able to find my emails. I'm the only Stuart Waiton virtually that exists because my name's a very strange name. But feel free to get in touch if people want to get in touch, if they want to find out how to help or just to ask questions or argue with me, feel free.
Well, the very best of luck with it. I'm sure we'll be talking again real soon, Stuart. Thanks for giving us your time today, mate. Fascinating stuff. I appreciate that. Look after yourself.
Cheers.
Cheers, Stuart. That's Dr. Stuart Waiton PHD live on the line there. He's going to stand for the Brexit Party, as he's going to stand for MEP in Scotland. Put in Herald, put in Stuart Waiton, Waiton, but I do have a link to those articles somewhere. And before I close everything down, I will tweet it. There you are. Right, well, that's nearly it for today's programme. It's been a mad day. I got on air just in the nick of time. As you know, because I've been telling you this week, we're moving house next week, and it's never easy, that. And there's been a lot going on. There's been a lot that I've been dealing with. Not bad stuff, good stuff, but I've been dealing with stuff and trying to get this programme on the air. And I normally get my editing and stuff done about 40 minutes before I go on air. Today I was going right up against the news, and I was editing bits and pieces about Danny Baker and the monologue. So it's been a crazy day. So I'm going to take my leave of you in a couple of minutes' time. Only slightly shorter show today. But I will be back with you on Sunday morning for Sunday View, where we'll look through the Sunday papers, you and me, and we'll listen to the Sunday morning talk shows as well. But next week, I'm pretty much not going to be on air. I will put something on the website to explain why I'm not going to be on air. And Paul Ripley, the wonderful and amazing and ridiculously gifted Paul Ripley, is going to disassemble this mad studio here and pack it all away and transport it and then rebuild it in our new abode. And that's going to take a few days. It's going to take a day or so to dismantle it, and it's going to take a couple of days to put it all back up together again and do all of that, that sound stuff and get it all sounding right. So you can write me off for next week. I'll tell you this again on Sunday. You can write me off for next week, but I hope that the following week that I'm only going to miss 1 or 2 days. That's the hope, right? And I don't want to miss any time at all. Believe you me. But there you go. I mean, I normally take a week off around this time anyway. Long-time listeners will know that I take a week off in the spring. So you can write that week off next week as my week off in the spring. And we're hoping that it'll only be a couple of days the following week. I've just repeated what I've said already. So thanks for listening today. Fascinating to listen to Stuart Waiton. Always like listening to him, and I hope he has a good showing in that election on the 23rd of May. It's an outrage that we're seeing European parliamentary elections in this country 3 years after the people voted to leave. It's an outrage, but there you are. We are where we are. Going to leave you with some Louis Armstrong, closing out the programme. You enjoy your weekend wherever you are and whomever you're doing it with. I've been Richie Allen. Look after yourselves and one another. See you Sunday.